Hi guys, Dajahao. Thank you for joining me here for my fourth video on Where Winds Meet, where I will be talking about the three most popular builds for PvP in the current Chinese meta. And I'll also explain why I'm looking at that and how I came to the conclusion that three builds in particular were considered the top builds right now. And I'll also bookmark that section. So if you want to go direct to see what those builds are, you can go ahead and do that. But in addition to just showcasing those builds, I wanted to explain the process of how I um, sought out sort of an improved build from what I started on, and the type of analysis, if you can call it that I did to identify what I thought might be the right builds for me. And if you are, interested in considering, what's popular now in China and having trouble figuring out what that might be due to language issues or whatever, this might be a good starting point. However, do note that there have been changes to the meta, and the top builds have changed significantly. But you can at least take a look at what's popular now, and also maybe consider a foundation about how to choose your build. Uh, and in that context, I'll sort of explain like how I started and what I think was wrong with the way I began the game. So essentially, I began the the game leveling up and campaigning using this build here, which is Nameless Sword and Panacea Fan. So Nameless Sword is the starting one of the two starting DPS weapons. Nameless Sword and Nameless Spear are your two options. And Panacea Fan is one of the two healing weapons that you can get early in the game. I should say this one you can get early on. The Soul Shade Umbrella, which is the other healing weapon, takes a little bit longer. I think you have to open up the Kaifeng map, which is like the second major map in the game. And I chose this type of build originally because I usually default to healers in other games. And also, I thought it would be convenient to not have to rely on healing flasks. And in terms of like starting off and leveling up and doing the campaign, it actually worked great. But as I leveled up past like level 40 or 50 or so, I noticed that there were problems. Like it seemed like the mobs and bosses were getting harder. And then when I started doing cooperative, someone's inviting me to their guild. No thanks. When I started doing cooperative play, I noticed that most players were not using this type of mixed build when they were in the healing role. So usually they were playing dedicated healer or dedicated DPS or the tank build, but few characters were mixing um, weapons in this way. Moreover, I found that most players were sticking to a set weapon or a set of two weapons that are naturally paired together. So, for example, the Nameless Sword pairs with the Nameless Spear. That's the strategy sword. And let me see if I can find the, it should be this one. So this is Nameless Sword, and it pairs with Nameless Spear. They both have the same icon here. It's the same color, and they have the same Chinese character, Hong, in it. And they naturally complement each other. Panacea Fan, in turn, uh, pairs with the Soul Shade Umbrella. They both have the same green icon here with the character Lean in it. And these two weapons tend to naturally complement each other. And they also benefit from the same passives in general. So the passives are here. They're called Xinfa in the game. In Chinese, I think they'll be called internals in in the English version, but essentially they're the passive arts. And I have a three passives that benefit healing, another one that is like a good general recovery passive that almost everyone is using. So you might want, I won't go into passives, the internals much in this video, but you might want to remember this one. It's called Yishui Ge in Chinese. It might be called Song of Yishui or something like that in the English version, but I think the icon will be the same. So although I've been able to discover the English names of most of the weapons, I don't know what the English names of the internals are going to be. But if you can remember that icon, and later on I'll show you some findings that came about through a spreadsheet analysis, and it looks like 2/3 of the top players that I looked at in the leaderboards are using this passive, regardless of what type of build they're using. But other than that, I'm not going to go much into what the passives are. That being said, this current build is not benefiting from the same passives. You don't have the built-in synergy that two weapons of the same set offers, and it tends to limit you, I think, as you're starting out. That being said, like if it suits your play style, like if you're doing solo play style, and you want to be able to heal yourself while you do boss fights all alone, then that's kind of a another type of synergy offered by your own play style. And so that's not to say that you can't mix and match the different schools, but you are losing out on some benefits. And that's what I found. And especially if you want to, be good at healing in group content, you do need to stick to a set. At least that's what I would recommend. And so what I found is that after spending all the time and resources to leveling up the sword to in the 60s, I found out that as I wanted to get more into healing, I couldn't rely on this type of split build. So what I did is I switched to the Soul Shade fan. And so now I have equipped the two healing weapons. And again, this is your only real option as a healer. But it does offer, the maximum healing capability. And also what I found is that the attacks from the umbrella are actually pretty good. And you can actually rely on these attacks. They have kind of like a narrow AoE, like a cleave type of thing built in, and it's pretty good. And you can actually do solo content with this build, just relying on the um, light attacks offered by the healing umbrella and fan. Although they're not the same as the heavy attacks of the DPS weapons. So well, while this, there is only one healing build. So if you want to do healing, then this is the meta right here: the Panacea fan and the Soul Shade umbrella. And using a mix of internals similar to what I've used here is also pretty common for this type of build. But I think after I finish on the Chinese server, I'm going to have enough time on healing, and I want to move on to something else. I think this is an okay game for healing, but I don't think there's like a huge amount of diversity in the defensive and support options. Most of the time, you're just kind of rotating through 4 healing abilities. There are also some mystical arts like the Kung Fu skills that can give you shield buff types of things, but it's not as dynamic as like healing in a game like World of Warcraft, where you're you're buffing and dispelling things. And also there's not like an option to become more specialized in healing, like leaning towards DPS or something like that. Like if you ever played WoW, Fistweaver Monk, produces healing through DPS attacks, and there's not currently a way to uh, kind of customize and develop healing in different ways. So I hope eventually they'll kind of expand on that in the game. That being said, I mean, it is fun. It's enjoyable. I've had a good time doing PVE and PvP and healing. But what I really want to do is figure out what type of DPS or tank build um, would be better for like solo PvP content. If you're going to be doing PvP as a healer, you basically need to do twos or threes. You can't do solo. And so in order to figure that out, sort of once I figured out that I needed to stick to developing the healing set to, I guess, min max, if you will, the healing capability, I also needed to figure out what I could do in terms of DPS, in terms of choosing weapons, builds, and so on, and choose something that would be viable. And I'll show you what process I went through to do that and what the results are. And again, if you want to just skip to the end and see what the builds are, that's fine. But if I don't have very many subscribers right now. I've just started this channel, so if you do like this content, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And if people like this, I'll do like a similar video for PvE builds. Although I think there'll probably be some similarities from what I've seen so far. So how did I determine like what are the popular builds? If you go into the, what do you call this area of the menu? I don't know, it's cooperative content. And this is the PvP area. And there are a lot of different PvP-ish opportunities in the game, but I've just focused on 1 versus 1 PvP, 2 versus 2, and 3 versus 3. There are some other types of things here that are different. There's a 5 versus 5, but it's very confusing. You tend to get paired up in different ways. There are things that are more like battle royale and so on. So I think the more traditional PvP options are 1s, 2s, and 3s. And also, as I mentioned, 2s and 3s are good for healers, so I tend to participate in those. But what you can do is you can, from the PvP menu, you can go in and you can check on the leaderboards. And here we can see the top, I don't know how many they have here, maybe 100 or so, maybe they show 50 or 100, I don't know. But what I did is I identified the top 10, and let's take a look at them. I think what you do is you click on the player, you go to their homepage. All right, this one has kind of a loud audio thing to their homepage, but they're using the fan and umbrella DPS combination, which is one of the popular builds that I'll be talking about. Let's leave this page though; it's too loud. And here's another one, the number 2 player on 1 versus 1s. That's nice. It's a nice homepage. And you can see their build here. They're using the rope dart and twin swords build, which is also very popular. And so what I did is I built a spreadsheet with the top 10 in each category. But I should mention that it's not exactly the top 10 because some players hide their build. So I picked the top 10 in each category for builds that are available. Let me see if I can show you one person that's hidden their build. Yeah, okay. So this person who's the number 1 person in 3s, number 1 by a long shot, has a DPS and tank combination build, which I would love to know what that is. But it's hidden. They've elected not to share that. So what I've done is basically taken the top 10 that are available. So that's one caveat to the data. Let's jump to the spreadsheet, and I'll show you what sort of conclusions came out of this review. Okay, now over to the dreaded spreadsheet. So on this table, I have a list of the different weapons that are available now in the Chinese version. There are 16 weapons, each of which fall into 8 different schools. The English weapon names here, the schools here, the weapon type, and whether they're DPS, range, DPS melee, healing, tank. Not many notes here, but just um, I've seen some discrepancies in the English names. So basically, I didn't play the Chinese open beta, but I watched a lot of videos of players, and I looked at them when their recordings as they open the menus to basically mine the English language weapon names, and I've seen uh, different versions of the name for uh, the twin blades, the one, single dual blade weapon, which sometimes is called Naraka blades, but I think it'll probably be called Infernal twin blades. Um, as far as these 4 weapons that are in red, I do not know what the English names of these are going to be. I don't think these will be available on international release. Originally, there were 12 weapons on the China server, all the ones that are not highlighted in red. And these 4 were released later. So the Chinese game has been available since like December 2024, and it's gone through a lot of changes and expansions and weapons tunings and so on. So I think that these 4 weapons will be available later. That being said, a lot of the original weapons are popular in the meta. So if you can feel free to screenshot this if you want to have an idea about what the breakdown was. Someone was asking me on Reddit about APMs, actions per minute, and my guess is that the DPS melee weapons will be the most sweaty in terms of button smashing and actions per minute, because you have to parry, and I think that'd be pretty frantic. Right button smashing. I think tank would be the second busiest, and then DPS range, which are the darts and the fans. I'm not sure if they consider the dart ranged or melee, but I think the healing would be the least busy in terms of actions per minute. I think healing, you can just kind of sit back all the time and just work on your rotation. But melee DPS is very, very aggressive, using charging attacks, chasing players around, and trying to parry. Also, okay, here are the results. Okay, so this is a mess, but let me explain to you what it is. I mentioned before that I went through uh, each type of PvP, 1 versus 1s, 2 versus 2s, and 3 versus 3s. And what I did is I identified the top 10 people who were sharing their builds, and I recorded what the first and second weapon were in their build. It's the Chinese name. And then I also took note of like what the internals were. But like I said, I don't have the English names of all these. The only really thing I have to report on with the internals is that um, one is used much more than the others. So Yishuige, out of all the 120 different internals that came up in this analysis, was used by 20 out of 30 of the players, regardless of their build. And so I would I would definitely pick this. I would try to unlock that early. But in terms of the weapons, let's get into that. So there are some very common visible trends here. If you look at 1 versus 1 PvP, you have 3 people in the top 10 using the Ninefold Umbrella and Inkwell Fan combination. This is the Silkbind Jade set, and it's basically the DPS version of the Fan and Umbrella combo. What I was using before was this healing combo. So there are a couple. I think the 2 fans to choose from, and there are actually 3 umbrellas. Umbrellas are pretty OP right now. Like a lot of the time, especially in PvE content, it seems like more than half the players have some type of umbrella build going along. The second um, build of note in the 1 versus 1 category is this combination of the Mortal Rope Dart and the Infernal Twin Blades. So the 3 people using Ninefold Umbrella and Fan, also 3 people using this combination in the top 10. And here's the combination of internal Twin Blades and Mortal Rope Dart. As you can see, both of these different builds, the Inkwell Ninefold range DPS and the Twin Blades Rope Dart DPS, both are part of the same set. So it's not like what I would call a mixed build. However, there are a couple instances of people that use like Nameless Sword and Twin Blades, which are different schools, and they made it to the top 10, which is it's impressive, and it shows that there is room for identifying your own idea of synergy. I've heard that some DPS players like to choose 2 weapons that have like a charge attack to chase people down in close distance. And also one thing that stands out is that I love this guy who is using Nameless Sword and Nameless Spears. So these are basically the starter weapons. And this guy made it to the top 10 with the starter set. All right, let's take a look at the 2 versus 2 rankings. We have 3 players who are using that Umbrella Fan DPS combination, and 1 person who is using that same combo of Rope Dart and Twin Blades. And now we see the tank come in. This is the 1 pure tank build using the Stormbreaker Spear and Thundercry Blade. The tank build has become more popular in the most recent meta, and I've seen people on the net, Chinese social media, I should say, comment on that this build was like buffed from worst to S tier, A tier, and that it often does more DPS than a lot of the DPS builds. Right. But in 2 versus 2, aside from that, I don't think there are a lot of standouts really. There are a couple. There's the new Longsword and Glaive here. Again, a couple mixed builds. Ninefold Umbrella and Nameless Spear. So that's a mix of the ranged DPS Umbrella and the starter melee DPS Spear. And down here, so I play this build, and it's not in the top 10 of anything, except probably for PvE. So what I did is I spent a lot of time searching these lists to see if I could find my healing build in there, and I had to go down to rank 38 to see the first instance of the healing build in 2s. There's probably more in 3s, but I haven't really looked that hard. but I don't, like I said, you're not going to find the healing build in 1 versus 1s. So looking at 3 versus 3, we have 3 people using the tank build, 1 person using the fan umbrella combination, 3 using the rope darts. Oh, here's the here's the healing build. Yeah, there is 1 healer in the top 10 of 3s, so that's nice. But essentially, that's what came out of the list. Again, there's some other mixed options, but there's a preponderance of 3 builds, and the total count from the chart is that you have 7 people overall using 9-fold umbrella and inkwell fan, 7 using the mortal rope dart and infernal twin blade, so I called those S tier, and then 5 people using the tank build of Stormbreaker Spear and Thundercry Blade. I guess the runner-up would be the new Glaive and new Longsword build that I don't think will be available on release. And so that was the first step, to review the top 10 in each of the 3 PvP categories that I chose, 1s, 2s, and 3s. And then what I did is I compared that with what I saw on social media, mainly Bilibili, which is kind of like a Chinese YouTube where there's a lot of gaming content. And there's a few channels that I follow there, and one of them, like 2 that produce tier lists every month or 2. And I looked at those for August, and one kind of went in depth to PvP, and it did also rank these 3 builds among the highest. So in general, what I think is more subjective in the social media universe out there also reflects this. So I think it's pretty safe to say, at least in the current meta, 9-fold umbrella, inkwell fan, S tier, mortal rope dart, infernal twin blades, S tier, Stormbreaker Spear, Thundercry Blade, I don't know, A tier, I guess. And so I think probably going into the international release, I'm going to choose one of these builds. Like I said, I don't have a lot of subscribers. It's a new channel, so if you like this, please like and subscribe, and leave some comments if there's something you want me to data mine on Chinese social media or in the Chinese language charts. Let me know, and I'll try to follow up on that for you. Until then, hope to see you on the international release. Take care. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Rockin' bros, GM. rockin' bros,